In this is installment of C-Suite Spotlight, Jen Crow is joining us, and she's a vice president of operations at Tenstorrent, a cross-functional role that really is a quintessential Swiss Army knife of an organization whose wide-spanning responsibilities covers everything from HR, accounting, global sites, and everything in between. She originally hails from Ireland, but is a lifelong Austenite and brings over a decade of experience in engineering operations in the semiconductor industry, including integral roles at both AMD and Intel. Her success at Tenstorrent is no accident. Jen led the strategic and operational aspects of growing the company from 80 people to 280 in less than 2 years, and laid the groundwork for adding over 100 of those employees to Tenstorrent last year alone. I can't wait to learn more about how your experience and skills have enabled you to grow companies and find success in your career. So, welcome.
Thank you. That was such a nice intro. I do just want to mention though that we're actually at 400. So I started at I'm employee number 76 and we're at 400 as of Q1, early Q1 this year. So it's a big growth spurt.
Wow, that is incredible. Can you actually take a few minutes to walk the audience through your career journey and highlight any pivotal decisions or relationships that ultimately led you to your current role at Tenstorrent?
Sure. Yeah. I like to say that I grew up professionally at AMD. I started there in, gosh, I guess 2003, something like that. I was there for 10 years. And I had such a great experience at AMD because I had the opportunity to move around and see several different aspects of the organization. And like I started there on the web team. So I was doing web analytics as part of an extension of marketing go to market. The marketing go to market team. I did program management. I had a job at one point at AMD where I was doing samples management, and I was, they like before you have a new product come out, you just send samples off to customers. And so I would literally move samples from one tray to the next to make sure that the customer got all the samples that they needed for their bring up and qualification. I think though at AMD, they're really pivotal choices that I made and decisions that I made. I spent some time on the lean team, and I don't think the lean team's there anymore, but that was incredibly helpful because I went from having a role within a team to having a role across many teams. And I learned lean and Kaizen. And so I learned that language around how to see and understand cross-functional dependencies as they manifest in mutual deliverables into a finished good, and then how to break them up into process, how to see what's working, what's not working, and then drive process improvement in both in a transformational as well as incremental fashion. So I think the next big pivot in my career at AMD was when I was asked to join to take on a role as the business operations lead. And this was largely managing the budget. And I thought, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. And then I ended up loving it. I loved all of the levers that you can pull in managing a big budget. I love the complexity. I love the constant problem solving. And then from that point on, I realized I'm a business operations person and I haven't really left since then. So those were some critical decisions. I did take it was really helpful and positive for me to take a break after AMD. So at one point, I just kind of, things come to an end after 10 years. I was ready for a break. And so I took some time off and I traveled and I hung out on the front porch with my dog and I cooked for myself. And it just kind of gave me this time to, I didn't even know all the things that were processing in my brain because I had so much time to
Mhm.
just relax and be. And then that created a pivot in my career afterwards. And the pivot came with complexity, sophistication. It was almost like I took a break in order to speed up, which is an interesting contrast. And then, I guess the next important career inflection point is when I started working for Jim Keller. I'd known him for a long time. But when I actually first started working for him, being that close to somebody who is a student of leadership, you learn a lot. You learn a lot by what you see and observe, and then you learn a lot by what I was able to, like the raw materials that I was working with and the freedom and the space that I was given to go and try to create something.
That's awesome. And so you went from an operational, leading a budget and leading a business. And what a great segue to learning some leadership lessons from really a visionary within the space within the industry. What are one or two key leadership lessons that you learned along the way from Jim Keller that have shaped who you are as a leader today?
Jim Keller believes in the wisdom of the team. And one thing I've noticed about him is that he will set an aspirational goal, and maybe it will just feel like something that is not like, how are we going to do that? But he will set an aspirational goal. It's far out, it's in the future, it is informed by his experience of the world and his understanding of technology. But he'll set a stretchy goal, and then he's clear about the objectives, and then he gives the team space. And he doesn't, it's not so much that he cares about hitting exactly what that goal is. Sometimes he cares about the goal, but mostly when it's something that's big and juicy and aspirational, he gives the team space to figure out how to find their way there. And he has a nice, every leader has to figure out their own way of checking in and seeing what the status is into the accomplishment of the goal, but also giving them space. And so he kind of has a mastery at this ebb and flow and this in and out of setting a goal, giving the team space, encouraging them, kind of helping them getting the engine running. And then as soon as they're moving, kind of getting out of their way and just managing through checking in and making sure that things are on track.
Is Jim Keller's presence at Tenstorrent a large reason why you're there today?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I have enjoyed any kind of mentorship or leadership conversations I've had with Jim Keller over the 10 years that I've known him. When I started working for him at Intel, I felt both free and terrified in a very compelling way concurrently. And when he left Intel, I looked around for other things. There's great people at Intel. I enjoyed working there. But when I was talking to him about the opportunity at Tenstorrent, it was just so obvious and so interesting to take what I had done as a range extender for him as his chief of staff and move into owning these functions myself. And I just thought, it's great working for Jim. I learn a lot. Let's keep this going.
So, as a follow up to that, in what ways has your leadership style had to be adapted coming from large companies like AMD and Intel to leading at Tenstorrent?
I think the biggest change in the adaptation from big company to small company, at a big company, you may have a big view, but you own a narrow scope and there's lots of infrastructure to support you. At a startup, you have a big view of a smaller space, but what you own every bit of it. And there may not be any support function at all. And so I think that the biggest transition was kind of a grittiness. It was pace, it was grittiness, it was a move to practicality. All the energy that you spend in a big company getting a large audience bought into some change or transformational initiative, you still have to do that at a smaller company and at a startup, but it's not as big, right? So all of that energy is now available to continue to attack other problems. And when you're growing really fast, it's kind of like one scaling challenge after the next, right? So it's kind of moving your energy from a lot of time on buy-in, a lot of time on buy-in, a lot of time working with the technical and cultural debt that has already been built into tools and processes. You don't have to spend that time anymore. You redirect it towards very tangible, very tactical activities. I also think that kind of a macro view that I have, and I've communicated to several candidates from that we've interviewed from some of the bigger companies, is that working at a startup like Tenstorrent, um, it's like being liberated, but liberation requires humility. And what I mean by that is, like when I started my first day, There were only 10 people in the U.S. in Tenstorrent. And Stan Sokorak, the VP of software, he was the lead for the US site. And there's only 10 people, right? So he was doing HR, he was doing payroll, he was doing facilities, he was doing all the banking. He sat me down on the first day and he said, "Today we're going to the bank and we're going to stay at the bank until you get on all of the bank accounts and until you get a debit card." And I thought, wow, I've never been on the corporate bank account before. And that's what we did. And then the second day, he sat me down and he said, "I'm going to show you how to run payroll. And you're going to run payroll this week." I had never run payroll before, right? Since then, I've built out the HR function. And it wasn't me alone, right? There's a team behind it, but we've built out the HR function. We've got, more sophisticated tools. We've got more sophisticated processes. We've got more sophisticated workflows. We've scaled to be able to accommodate 400 people during comp review cycles, during stock refresh cycles, during performance feedback cycles. So all of this stuff has been built, and the liberation comes when you get to build something from scratch without technical debt, without cultural debt, without policy debt, without all of these things that amass over time, right? So you're building something fresh and new. That's liberating and inspiring. And it has it's so ripe with fulfillment. But it also requires you to have the humility to run payroll and to know that if you get it wrong, you may have to cut a check and send it to the person in the mail with a stamp on it.
Absolutely. Well, and to walk into that environment, having people that are already operating in that way. We know Stan very, very well. We actually helped him in initially building the team there in Austin in the very, very early days. So knowing that you're walking and working with somebody that's as humble as him, I'm sure is helpful.
Yeah, and he was so happy to give me payroll.
I can imagine. Well, Tenstorrent is one of the companies that we firmly believe is going to be a winner in the AI, machine learning, accelerated compute space. And we also believe that there are going to be multiple different winners, that it's a market that's too big for there to just be one winner. In your view, why do you believe Tenstorrent is well positioned to succeed?
I think that we're well positioned to succeed for a bunch of reasons. One is we have a compelling team of people who have done this before. They have built great products. They have, and these products have driven tremendous value in the industry. They have, they're tried and true, experienced execution people who also have brilliant architectural minds. So we have built a great team. Another reason is I think we have great timing. So AI is like, even my grandmother is talking about AI right now, and she's asking me, what does it mean? So AI is, possibly we're in a hype cycle, but actually what's happening is the way compute is created and generated and how it manifests is transforming, and it's fundamentally different. And so we're at the beginning in a transformation around compute. And we have products both in the AI space as well as RISC-V. RISC-V has been around a long time, but I personally believe that RISC-V is well situated to be a solution for semiconductor interdependence across the globe for many countries who are seeing semiconductor independence as a national imperative right now. Right? So we have timing and we have the team and we have incredible momentum.
Absolutely, and we're big proponents of the RISC-V revolution, as it may too. We believe that that's an important part of democratizing AI in general, which will accelerate the growth of not only the space, but the advancements, whether it be medical technology advancements, et cetera, that will change humanity.
Yeah.
Um, so in operations, you can have a mindset of move fast and break things, or I'm here to create stability. Which of those approaches do you index more towards?
I can honestly say that it depends on the situation. I think when you're growing, when you're at a startup that's growing really fast, like sometimes it's like keeping a bunch of plates spinning. Sometimes it's like juggling flaming balls. It's it's kind of it's a constant changing dynamic. There's it's kind of like constant hot spots and urgent things
Hmm.
that have to be tended to. When you're growing really fast, sometimes, and you're growing really fast from an employee perspective, and your scope includes HR and recruiting. Sometimes you're moving fast and breaking things. And so in that
Hmm.
context, it's important to have a really clear methodology for understanding risk and being able to calibrate, of all of these things that need some relief and that need some help, and that, maybe they need to go faster. Maybe we need to solve the problem for the first time. Maybe this needs a process or a tool. For all of these things, you need some method of being able to say, if we fix it in this way, if we don't, maybe you start with, if we don't fix it, is it an existential threat to the business? No?
Mm.
Okay. So then, if it's not an existential threat, is there an existential threat that we have to go solve right away? So it's constantly prioritizing and allowing things to maybe be a little messy so that you can tend to the priorities that really matter in the moment. And then, you kind of, you walk it down as you eliminate an existential threat. Maybe you have space for something that's really painful, but won't actually kill the business. So
Yeah.
you go and focus on that. So in the things that are really hot and high priority, I would say go fast and break things, but understand what the consequences are and take more time and
Mm.
space for the things that could really have a big long-term impact for the business. For the things that have a smaller term impact, it's okay to move fast and maybe not be so diligent. There is a point where you get to enough process and tool where things kind of stabilize. So for us, it was a certain number of in my scope, it really comes down to the amount of people that we're onboarding in a quarter. So that's the metric that we've hit a stable point in that. Our processes work for that, and we can scale up or down, a percentage. Once you get to that space, then it becomes more about stability and incremental
Mhm.
improvement. So in this space, we're both looking at the tweaks. How do we make it better? How do we make the employee experience better? How do we make the process run more smoothly? How do we make the data cleaner? How do we make the tools serve us better? How do we make things take less time? So we're doing this iterative process improvement that is all about stability, while we're also saying we have enough breathing room now that instead of solving for the next 10 people that need to be onboarded, we're going to solve for 2x our current employee base. And that means
Wow.
we're solving for processes, tools, and teams that will be able to support 2x our employee base. So all of that is more, I'm here for stability. I'd say the other thing is when it comes to people, growing people development, mentorship, this is something where you can't move fast and break things.
Hmm.
It requires trust. It requires insightful observation. It requires care around how you deliver feedback. It requires, really thinking through development plans that work and setting up a long-term relationship to help people grow over time, particularly with soft skills, right? Soft skills take a lot of time to develop. In that place, I am always trying to create stability. I'm always trying to be as gentle and stable as possible. That's not a place to move fast or break things. So I'd like to say I do both.
Very well said. And now scaling Tenstorrent by 5x in 2 years across global regions is a huge undertaking. Can you describe what that experience has been like and share some of the significant challenges you faced in terms of leading the expansion and integrating teams?
When I think about it, I think um, across my career, I had done enough of all of these pieces to at least know enough how to experiment, or at least know enough about how to build the team and set the goal and the objective and get the momentum going. A lot of times I find that the hardest obstacle is going from 0 to 1. It's
Mhm.
turning ambiguity into specificity, defining the problem space, defining what the desired outcomes, finding the team that's going to support it, getting the initial momentum going, and then letting them take off. So, if you have that skill, then really I think the most important thing is to have a very clear prioritization methodology. And then, within my experience with prioritization methodologies is I have one and I'm clear about what it is and I use it, but it seems like every time I scale, my prioritization methodology has to scale with me. So, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. No, it definitely does. And um, talking about talent a little bit, Tenstorrent isn't immune to the talent shortage within this space, and it can be especially challenging to hire for many of the engineering skill sets, such as hardware, software, algorithm development, and even non-technical roles. How has Tenstorrent managed to identify and attract talent across those different skill sets?
At a high level, I want to say that building something from scratch is really compelling. It's desirable. When I talk to engineers about building something new, it is one of the number one things that is desirable about coming to Tenstorrent. So building something from scratch is incredibly compelling. Working with the team that we've built is compelling. Like we have some serious industry aces who have done amazing things. You cannot argue
Mhm.
with the quality of our team. AI and Risk 5, both of these opportunities are incredibly compelling. And so the work that we're doing and the people that we're doing it with is inherently compelling. And I think that that's, incredibly desirable. As far as like, how do we do it? I can't disclose that, but I can tell you that we have more coming.
Awesome. Well, we'll be excited to hear about that. Let me ask you this: as far as talent acquisition goes, what are the challenges that are keeping you up at night?
Supply and demand is number one. And the I think we're seeing the industry has really shifted. And there was a long time when there was not, um, well, let me say it another way. The amount of semiconductor startups right now is the most I've ever seen across my career. I've never seen such fertile soil for startups in semiconductors. It's expensive. It's a big risk. It takes a long time. It's hard. Whatever it is about the dynamics that we're in, it's very fertile soil for semiconductor startups. It's also fertile soil for large companies to go and do their own custom semiconductor products, right? Their own custom silicon. This is driving a giant surge in demand for talent.
Mhm.
And when you look at the amount of engineers that are coming out of engineering schools, there's not enough supply over time to meet up with that demand. So I'm really interested to see what we do. It may even be something that we need to think about as an industry around getting even more um, development and interest in early school activities to encourage people into STEM programs. But that's the number one thing. I think the second thing that kind of keeps me up at night is helping our leaders as much as possible support new people as they come in, right? The growth that you mentioned 5x growth. Um, when my team is small in comparison to some of the engineering teams, and even on my team, thinking through how do I integrate these people? How do I make the best use of their talent and skill set? How do I set them up so that they engage with the team right away? They have as much information as they need, but they're also set up to be self-feeding and self-caring so that we can work autonomously in a smart, sharp, and fast way. I think about that for my team. I think about that for the engineering teams. I think about that for anybody who's growing. It's a real challenge to figure out how to grow fast and still be efficient.
Absolutely. And as the father of four daughters, I'd love to hear your insights about increasing the representation of women in tech. What advice or strategies would you suggest for companies and leaders that want to strengthen their companies by increasing the number of women in their organizations?
I am a very strong believer in mentorship and in personal development. I care a lot about developing the bench. I care a lot. I care a lot about hard skills development. I care almost more about soft skills development. There's so much content in the world that if you're curious, you can go and teach yourself hard skills online.
Mm,
Soft skills require situational experimentation. It
mm,
requires feedback. It requires courage to go and try new behaviors and activities. So I care a lot about mentorship and I care a lot about developing the bench. I find it personally very satisfying anytime that I have mentored somebody, and maybe maybe we never worked together, maybe I've gone on to another company, um, but I find it very satisfying when there's been a major leadership change at a company that I have left. And the top three candidates for the role that's been made available are three of my mentees.
wow.
And so I find that just, it's so fulfilling. I just celebrate so much in their success. So you're asking, how do we get more women into engineering, into STEM? I don't know how. I don't have children myself. I don't know how to influence the entry into the educational system. I've researched it. I have some ideas. What I really focus on within Tenstorrent and any company I've ever worked for is I value mentorship. I value helping people. I value building communities. I value building a bench. And my
Mm,
experience with everybody, but in particular women, because you asked the question about women, is that when you have a mentor in your life that helps you grow and develop, it creates a long lasting bond. It creates confidence. It also creates leaders and people who
mhm.
are engaged, who feel like they have career path progression and they feel like they have fulfillment. They feel like they have community. They want to stay and they want to be engaged. And then they end up doing that for other people.
Very, very insightful. And as we come to a close, two final things. One, as somebody who's clearly passionate about mentorship, if you were to give one piece of overarching advice to somebody that you were mentoring, what would that be?
Mentorship requires engagement. It requires the mentee to own their development plan. And I have some responsibility as a mentor to be a keen observer, to be skillful in my feedback, to be intentional and deliberate in my suggestions. But implementation rests on the mentee, right? I will care. I will provide care and feedback and support, but implementation is on the mentee. And so I think, if you really want to grow and develop, it's out there. Human beings love to help other human beings. And it is flattering when you're approached by somebody and they say, "Will you be my mentor?" But the mentee, you really have to know that you want to grow and develop. You must maintain openness to the feedback that you're being given. You don't have to believe all of it, but try it on and see what's there.
Hmm.
You must be willing to try and experiment. You must be willing to come back and iterate, right? And if you do that, it is fertile soil for development.
Absolutely. Well, the final thing that I would ask is if somebody was highly interested in something that you said here, wanted to delve deeper, and just wanted to get connected with you, how would you recommend them do that?
LinkedIn is a great place. I'm listed there as Jennifer Crow. Maybe we can include the link in the notes. Fabulous. Yeah, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or conversations.
Well, it was as wide ranging as I thought it would be, and even more insightful. So, really appreciate your time, Jen, and look forward to speaking more in the near future.
Yeah, I enjoyed the chat. Anytime. Nice to see you.